Okay, we're recording. Welcome all. I'm Rick DiClemente with StarSelf.com and Astrology Unplugged. It's nice to have you with us on this Thursday night, even though you can't go out anywhere. I'll try to entertain you. And John's going to take us all to the beach where he's at. And we can all put virtual backgrounds behind us and have a good time. Tonight should be very interesting, I think, and I'm afraid some people may not come because they think it's just a chart of Bob Dylan and Oprah, but this is an incredible journey astrologically to look at his chart. First, I wanted to start by saying that in the past, I don't know, 10 years or so, I've noticed this incredible conjunction of planets that happened in 1945 and 46. Isn't it interesting? It happened right when the war was ending. It was Jupiter in Libra and Neptune in Libra and Chiron in Libra. And what I noticed, I'll show you Stephen Still's chart. What I noticed with these musicians especially is we have some absolutely astounding musicians with this triplicity here. This is called a stellium, Jupiter and Chiron and Neptune. They were all going back and forth in 1945, 1946. And these people just have this effortless ability, not all of them, if you ever watch Stephen Stills, I mean, the music's just pouring out of his hand. He's not even thinking about it. He's so effortless. And listen to the crowd that he joins during that 1 year period or so. These are the ones I found. And my girlfriend said to me, well, how come they're all men? Well, I found a couple women, but not to the level of the men that I did find. These are some of the musicians who have outstanding abilities that just effortlessly pours out of them. You got Bob Marley, a guy named Eric Clapton, Neil Young, Van Morrison, Pete Townsend, John Fogerty, a guy named Donald Trump. He's got it too, but he abuses the energy. A guy named John Prine, David Gilmour from Pink Floyd, Donovan, Barry Gibb, Freddie Mercury, and the women I did find on the list were Dolly Parton and Susan Sarandon. Now let me analyze this for you, because you can't do great stuff unless you have great planets. It's really hard to imagine that. You can have semi-medium powerful planets and you could do great stuff out of sheer effort. And people with great planets don't always get in touch with it. But in this case, these are some examples of people that have this phenomenal ability. Now, remember that in 45 and 46, these planets were retrograding, going forward, back and forth. The beautiful thing here is the Jupiter-Neptune, because Jupiter-Neptune, when it's together, is really a calling towards God. It's a person who is plugged in. They may not know it mentally, but they're just plugged in. And it goes all the way to their fingertips or to their dance toes. And this is where it comes from. Now, during most of the time that Jupiter was in Libra, so you did have all three of those planets in Libra. Neptune takes 164 years to go around. Chiron takes 51 years to go around. Jupiter every 12 years. So this did repeat itself exactly in 2009. And I'll tell you right now that you've got some kids walking around out there that are 11 years old now. And I remember when this happened in 2009 because I was writing a lot of newsletters. These are the kids of 2009. And notice these kids are all exact. 26 degrees of Aquarius, 2009. So these kids, they won't have the Libra qualities, they'll have the Aquarian qualities. So you're going to see a bunch of absolute startling geniuses coming out of this. because they got the 3 Aquarian planets. Now, what causes this? It took me a while to find it, and I have to track multiple people before I believe it. The Jupiter Neptune is really, really favorable for God-oriented people, spiritual people. I find a lot of trouble with it when it's square or when it's opposite. You get people that tend towards self-delusion. You have to keep an eye on it. Hi, Susan. But I started to say to myself, where does this Neil Young come? Where's these songs come from? John Prine just flows off their fingertips. It's just they're born with it. And in most cases, like you'll see with Neil and you'll see with Dylan, these people know that they are not the source. They know that when the muse calls, they drop everything and they pick up a guitar. They're in touch with the muse. And all the muse is a different way of saying your connection to the archetypes, your connection to God. So that's why they have a particular edge up on us. If you ever sat down and get hypnotized by Van Morrison, I mean, he's mumbling things and he's scatting and he's just taking you into his world. It's just unbelievable because he's in touch with this power. Too many of us are walking around without a map. We don't know these things are going on. And it's admirable that you live life without the map, and it's admirable you live life without an astrologer in a lot of ways because you're in touch with your own energies. But a lot of times an astrologer can really help because an astrologer can refine the vision, define the vision, define the energies a little bit finer than what most people can do. Hello, Sarah. So I wanted to show you those 3 planets, and apparently they're together about every 45 years because of the different ratios. So the next one should be coming 2054 in the sign of Gemini. So anyhow, when I do clients in 1945, 46, I keep seeing that. Now that doesn't mean it has to manifest, but you'll notice that it shows up in Stephen Stills in his first house. So it's very powerful in his first house. And that's that ability to just take the guitar. I mean, when you hear Stills play, he's got his own signature sound. Sweet Bluty Jew eyes. Sweet Bluty, sweet Judy Blue Eyes. I'll get my mouth working yet. Anyhow, just magnificent qualities. So tonight I want to focus mainly on Dylan. If I get to the part where I want to show you Oprah's chart, the reason I'm going to show you Oprah's chart is not a natural. Oprah's chart has a lot of trouble in it. And I'm going to show you where a lot of times she could have gone real south. But she picked up the flack, she put it on her spine, she found the courage, and she did a lot by herself. And you'll see such dynamic, diverse energies in her chart. But we're going to start out with the genius. And I've been studying him a lot lately. He's 79 now. And I'm going to show you why Dylan is what he is. Boy, I had a hard time saying that word. That's like when I was on the radio and I was trying, back in 82, I was on the radio and I kept trying to convince the lady that we were habits of creature. And she wasn't getting it. You got to understand we're habits of creature. And she kept giving me a no response. And then I realized that's called a spoonerism when you get the words reversed. Okay, this is Bob Dylan. Born before 1945, 1941, hit New York in 1961 when he was 20 years of age, from Hibbing, Minnesota, born in Duluth. And John is Gemini with us tonight. Okay, Sun in Gemini, Venus in Gemini, Mercury in Gemini, Sagittarius rising. moon in Taurus. Saturn in Taurus, moon in Taurus, Uranus in Taurus, Jupiter in Taurus. 4 planets in Taurus, 3 planets in Gemini. Guy's got a Nobel Prize for literature. Neptune's out here all by itself. Mars is in Pisces, very sensitive. It's really not that interesting of a chart till you see all this stuff jammed together. You have to really be patient with a chart when you're learning to read. You have to look deeper and deeper and deeper. Okay, a Gemini, what's so Geminian about Dylan and other Geminis is they're changing the subject all the time. They're very interested in talking and discovering, and they're very lighthearted. And you see him when he was 20 and when he was 25 and 30, he looked like he was 12. He looked like a little kid. That's very Geminian. Okay. They like to talk, they like to explore, they like to communicate. One of the things that Dylan's known for is being very unfriendly to the press, looking down upon reporters and everybody else with disdain because he couldn't believe how stupid their questions were. Sign of a genius. Doesn't mean he should have done it, but he's just a genius. Now we're going to follow now. We're going to take our time. So when the sun is in Gemini in the 6th house, that means he's got a strong work ethic. And look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 planets in the 6th house. That's why he's got like 50 albums. He's prolific. He keeps producing. He's still on tour, and I've seen him in the old days, and I've seen him recently, and he definitely should get off tour because he ain't real good now. He's not even playing guitar anymore. He's just got a hat on, and he's playing a keyboard. And if he doesn't feel like singing, most of the time he doesn't feel like singing, and he's not very good anymore. But I hand it to him. Sometimes when he's up for it, he feels like it, he's very good. And he's done what? 10,000 tours? 5,000? I don't know. That's a lot of trips. So, when you're 79, you're approaching 84. When you get to 84, Uranus will have gone all the way around the circle. So he's coming into his Uranus return at age 84. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Now, when you're a Gemini, of course, your moon is extremely important. And one of the things that happens to Gemini people by their very nature is they get very scattered. They don't have a center. That's why they're accusing this president all the time of not having a center. He doesn't have one. Okay, he just doesn't have one. And you put Trump's moon is in Sag. This guy's got Sag rising. So you got a Gemini sun and a Sag rising. You got a real problem with that not having a center. So you give him 4 planets in Taurus, that really helps. That's the most centered, anchored sign that we have. So this really anchors him. This can be so anchored, it can be very boring. But when you get all the Gemini and the Sag, it's not boring. So what you find with Dylan is this great balance. He's got missing things here, making up for with other energies over here. Phenomenal, a phenomenal chart. Okay. So the moon in Taurus is very resourceful. A lot of times you see him, and especially his early days, identifying with blue-collar workers, aligning himself with Woody Guthrie, aligning himself with Pete Seeger in the songs for the common man. That comes all from his Taurus stuff. And his Sag rising, Sag is all about causes and being a cheerleader and leading the crowd. And there he is right behind Martin Luther King after he gave his famous speech. He's up there singing a song, 20 years old. I just watched his documentary again for the 3rd time, and it got fresh in my mind, so I was glad that I did. So, we're going to put pieces together. The Venus in Gemini is somebody who's It's 8 degrees away from the descendant, so it's down below. The Venus in Gemini, 9 degrees from the sun. Venus in Gemini is somebody who's friendly, uh, whose artistic abilities constantly change, like McCartney, another Gemini. They got this variety. They got the different sound on every song. Just come up with this, they come up with that, they come up with this, they come up with that. And, on the downside, Geminis get criticized a lot for being too chameleon-like. And sometimes it is a problem. And other times it's not, it's just their nature. They're not anchored like other people are. But you saw the 4 planets in Cancer. So that changes things. I'm sorry, in Taurus. All right. Where is his Mercury? In Gemini. Not only is it in Gemini, it's starting to set. The planets move this way. And a few minutes later, about 12 minutes later, Mercury would have gone down over the horizon. This line, called the ascendant, is actually the horizon. And when you're born, planets come up. That's why this is called your rising sign. Planets come over the horizon. They get to the top and they start to set. So he's born at nighttime. He's born 9:05 in the springtime. So summer's starting to happen. These planets have just set. And if you were watching in astrology, this is the west. If you were watching off the western horizon, the sun had just gone down, very bright Venus in the sky. It had just gone down. Mercury was just going down. And of course, you couldn't see these other planets because they're too far away. Now you put Mercury in Gemini. Now you got yourself a dictionary encyclopedia machine. I was watching a shot of him last night. No Direction Home is a movie made about him. And he's walking through London. And he's being very Gemini. He must be about 21. Looked like a little kid. And he's outside this cigarette shop. And they're filming him just goofing around. And he's outside just toying around and having a good time. And he's reading this sign on the side of this shop. It says cigarettes, vases, all the different things that you could buy in the store. And he just stops in the middle, and it looks like a bunch of nothing. And he just starts playing with the words on the screen, the words on the wall, and this word on this wall, and this catalog, and this price, and that number. And he's just playing with these words. And he looks silly. And you realize what he's doing is he's playing and he's playing and he's playing. And this is how Geminis learn. They learn by playing. And if you don't watch out for them, if they're not put in a Peter principle, like in the White House, they should be left in a sandbox. A lot of Geminis. They need to be in the sandbox and stay there unless they got more outer planets in their chart that draws them into bigger mental realms. This is why you see Trump's sandbox is what? Twitter. It's a sandbox. He comes out on stage and he wants to drink these awful things for this illness that we all are fighting. And he learns he better take his foot out of his mouth and get back in his sandbox. So it's the young spirit of Gemini. It's a very playful spirit. It can be, it's very similar to the playful spirit that you watched for years with Bob Hope. It's a very young, bouncy, light-hearted thing you're watching. And then you go back to Dylan looking at these words and playing with these words. And the next thing you know, 3 hours later, he's got this marvelous song written from reading that sign. Some brilliant song that came out of him playing with those words. So Gemini is very misunderstood. Gemini is the 3rd sign of the zodiac. It's not 11th, it's 3rd. And it's the sign where the soul is finding it has a mind, finding it has an intellect. It wants to communicate. I find these things, I tell you. Now, here's one of the main things about Gemini. Remember, they're all different, but one of the main central issues about Gemini. Geminis, without the rest of the chart, cannot tell you the difference in value between, I got a sandwich right here, and my house is on fire. They're equivalent in the Gemini mind. I got a sandwich here, my house is burning down. Of course, it's not that drastic, but Gemini is not made to evaluate stuff like that. That's why you see Trump fighting all about statues coming down while he's got 50,000 people getting sick every day. He's just not capable of dealing with it. Now, he has other planets in his chart, but they actually make it worse. So the true Gemini nature is to just have fun playing with words, playing with articles that they read, researching this, researching that, finding out what's on the other side of the fence. The Gemini is constantly enticed to go over the fence, because surely what's on the other side of the fence is better than where I am. And that's permanent. That's the central theme of Gemini. Now, you can see other things in the chart that change it. Pluto can make it deeper, and Saturn can make it stronger. It depends. But in his nature, you see this guy, there have been like 55 Dylans in our lifetime. There are 55 different Dylans. Listen to his songs. They just keep changing and changing and changing. Look at McCartney as a Gemini, Moon, and Leo. The material just keeps, they said he'd write 6 or 7 classic songs in 1 week. It just pours out of it. This is why George didn't get a lot of songs written, because he had to compete with Paul mainly. But the Gemini is a font of new ideas. So you go back to Dylan's chart, and you notice it's right on the descendant. And I've been telling you all along, any planet that's right on the angle, 1, 2, 3, 4, is a big deal. So this guy is a super Gemini because Mercury is right there, 3 degrees away from the descendant. Venus is right there. So I went back and I've been studying, listening to his Gifted album. By the way, I'll go ahead and tell you this because we've discovered it. Not all, but most artists do their classic work when they're 25. Liza and I have studied this a long time. They have other hits when they're 40, when they're 37, okay. But when they're 25 is when people seem to write their greatest stuff. It's not astrological. I don't know what it is. What happens at 25? Jupiter comes around at 24 for a second visit. But you look and see Springsteen, the Beatles, they're great stuff when they're 25. The Beach Boys, 25. It just happens when they're 25. So I went back and I looked at, I became enamored with how, just like the critics said all these years, how fabulous his album was in '65 called Blood on the Tracks. And what it was Neptune was here at 12. Neptune was here at 12. His Venus is at 12. Now get this in your mind. You're not going to have major things happen to you, plus or minus, unless a planet is there. It can't happen. When the planets are dead in your chart, when they're not lined up with your natal chart, nothing will happen. We all live through the doldrums, and when the planet's there, you can feel it. And was he feeling it? These planets, just listen to this album, Blood on the Tracks, he's got like 10 classics on one album. Because Neptune was pouring through, and he wasn't resisting it. And he wasn't trying to shape it. This is why Neil and Dylan are by themselves. Because they are servants to the muse. They are servants to their muse. And I'm sure you see this on Broadway. I'm sure you see this with doctors. I'm sure you see this with athletes. You see this with poetry, especially. They're servants to the muse. And they all tell you, you know, people ask you all the time, how did you write, what's the song? What's this great song?
Twisted Fate.
No, his greatest song. Boy, I'm definitely losing it. How does it feel to be on your own, like no direction home, like a rolling stone? They bug him and they bug him and they bug him. How does your right? And he keeps telling them, I don't know. It's because we are in the West and we're got all these courses. Put your hand here, say this, get prepared, get your notes all ready, get this, line up, get your haircut, get your clothes right, say this, do that. He's the complete opposite of that. So is Neil. It just flowed out of him one day. He says, I don't know how it happened. It just happened. And how does it just happen? The way it happens is because we don't know what we are. We don't know what we are. We think we're this, but we're not this. And that's why in my notes I was studying a section in the movie where they were interviewing his good buddy, Allen Ginsberg, the famous poet, who appears in some of his videos. And Ginsberg said Dylan is the wind between his mouth and the microphone. He is that. And Dylan got criticized heavily, especially when he went electric, and it hurt his feelings very badly in '65, which we're going to get into. But then he transcended it. And then Ginsberg said about him, he found a way in public to be a shaman. That's exactly what Dylan's doing. If you watch him, he's in another state when he's singing. He's not just getting up there singing his song. He's singing from that place where Hendrix was, that place where the greats go to. Dylan said, you give me a 6-string guitar and I can stop the world. I mean, these are very serious, meaningful statements. Give me a 6-string guitar and I can stop the world. What does he mean by that? Of course, it's a metaphor, but he's singing from a place that is so true and so valid that if he touches that space inside of all of us, we just drop everything because we're all fed such bullshit every night. Right, Sarah? We're just fed so much bullshit. Every minute, the commercial coming on, or the screaming in your head and all this stuff. And these guys refuse to do it. I don't know about you, but I only know 2 people that have refused to sell out, and that's Dylan and that's Neil. And they're both the same way. Neil said in his book, he'll be at a party or he'll be with some people and the muse will hit him and he drops everything, he runs and get a guitar and a song comes through. He says, I don't know how it happens. I don't know how it happens. It just comes through. I was just reading Tesla's life story. Tesla said the same thing. He said, just work, work, work. He said, you got to realize you are a receiver. You're not a creator and you're not a co-creator. That's bullshit of the 70s that we're still playing with the secret. We're co-creators. We're not co-creators. Tesla said we are speakers. We are receivers. We're picking up. That's why Tesla had his ears out there with his antenna out. He was listening. What did Da Vinci do? Say the same thing. He's got the ego, the self turned off, and he's listening. So a lot of that is the Mercury in this chart because the Mercury is so powerful. But I'm going to tell you right now, these early signs, these early planets are not enough to make him a genius. You cannot become a genius with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 planets in the first 3 signs. You just can't do it. You have to have connectivity. You have to have connectivity to the outer planets. You have to. And with Neptune up here in the ninth house, squaring the ascendant, this is the major intuitive planet of all. This is the Pisces ruler. It's 4 degrees from squaring the ascendant. It trines 1, 2, 3, 4. It trines all 4 of these planets, the Neptune. And that is the symbol of stuff just pouring into him. That's God's grace being given to you. Now, here's what's interesting, because I'm not stupid. There are other people probably born in the same hospital he was born at around the same time in Hibbing, Minnesota, or in Duluth. They didn't turn out to be geniuses. They didn't turn out to be musicians. So you do have your DNA. You do have your karma. You do have your parents. How did your parents raise you? You have all these other factors. In his case, he's an avatar. He's an avatar of a generation. I don't know where that comes in or how, but that's the Neptune connection. And if you look deeper into his harmonic charts, et cetera, you'll start to see where he's got these otherworldly abilities. You saw it with Hendrix. You saw it with Lennon. You certainly see it with Neil. You see it with Joni Mitchell. These people that have these otherworldly abilities, and you sit there and you try to mimic them, you can't do it. Stevie Ray Vaughan could play all the licks that Hendrix could play, but didn't sound the same. Didn't sound the same. I listened to him, I said, that's Jupiter Uranus. I listened to him. He's playing all the guitar notes that Hendrix played. I said, that's Jupiter Uranus. And I went and looked at his chart. There was Jupiter Uranus together. Very fiery, very clever, sparkly, wonderful, but was coming from Stevie Ray Vaughan, where Hendrix was coming from that place. And Hendrix was so spaced out, he couldn't explain it to you. He couldn't explain it. He was not very eloquent. Beautiful poetry, though. Okay, so we go back. We keep looking. So we see our first major clue is Neptune is in the ninth house and is powerfully feeding 4 planets here. Okay, where's Pluto? Pluto is up here with Chiron, 5 degrees away, and Chiron has a lot to do with your work skill, your work abilities, your destiny, and this is a very powerful Pluto because it's on the beginning of the 8th house. This is Scorpio's house, and Pluto is strong in the beginning of the house. So his Pluto, or his depth, his digger, his psychologist, is very deep. And you know from listening to Dylan, he's tearing people apart mentally and psychologically, really intensely. So the Pluto's trying to Eris, the new planet. These the two powerful planets of the zodiac, are trying to each other, and the next one is up here in the 9th house of philosophy. You got Jupiter next to Uranus. This is the radical. This is somebody who's socially upbeat and is socially disrupting things and leading for change. You got Uranus next to his moon, so he's very, very touchy emotionally. You never know where he's going to come from emotionally. He's kind of explosive and unpredictable. You got the moon right next to Saturn. And I had an astrologer tell me in 1971, because my son was square to Saturn, well, you're not very creative. Well, I tell you what, I've seen so many creative people with Saturn square to Sun, Saturn on the Sun. Here's Saturn 1 degree from his moon. You're not very creative. Well, that's what I call a crappy astrologer. Saturn next to the moon, moon next to Uranus, Uranus next to Jupiter, Jupiter 4 degrees from the sun. They're all tied. There's absolutely no way with this kind of 5-planet stellium, you could get a warehouse full of astrologers and there's nobody in that room could explain this to you. It's so complex, it's just unbelievable. And that's why these things pop out his ear, then they pop out his head, and they pop out his mouth, and these things just come out of him. That look at his new album. I mean, it's so unusual. And he's singing about JFK's murder, and he's just unpredictable because he's a voice of the collective. He doesn't know. The trick to him is he doesn't filter it. So I went back and I looked and I said, what the hell got into him in 1979 when he became a born-again Christian? And I looked, Neptune was right here approaching the ascendant. This is the most sensitive point in the chart right there. Okay, that's where life enters the body. Neptune was right there when he became a born again, and he came out with the album called You Gotta Serve Somebody. Slow Train Coming was the name of the album. And Saturn was here. Saturn was in Virgo on the cusp of the ninth house. Saturn in Virgo is like a drill sergeant in the ninth house of philosophy, means you're not going to mess around anymore. By God, you're going to start following, do it the right way. You're going to do it the right way. You're going to go get saved. So he floated away for a couple of years, and he got saved. He sang Jesus songs, and everybody wondered what the heck's going on with Dylan. And then a couple of years later, he floated back. So when you have these events in your life, John, and when you're looking for your next direction, John, this is no happenstance that you happened upon this show. You happened upon this show because there's a planet that's getting really close to one of your planets you're on the verge of a change. You're on the verge of a change. Here I read for John 12 years ago. I'm not going to read charts tonight, but maybe we could do it next week or so. But when you feel these things come on you, that's the beautiful thing about dealing with artists, musicians, psychics, poets especially. You feel these things coming. And it's so understandable why people don't believe in astrology. I mean, it's so understandable. They think you're nuts. But I know more about them than they do. I don't think I'm nuts. But it's just incredible that this reality is going on all the time underneath our typical reality, but we don't have a clue about it because we're busy buying cars and going to the store, putting our mask on. And this is going on all the time, these archetypal changes. And thank God that Jung came along, and Jung has got us on at least one track. We're starting to discover the archetypes through his work, his marvelous psychological work and deep psychology work. And we're starting to get in touch with our unconscious mind more and more and more and more. That's why we discovered 80 planets in this century. We discovered one in the 1800s, one in the 1700s, one in the 1800s, 2 planets in the 1900s, and it got to 2005, 80 new ones. That doesn't mean the telescope got better. It means that our minds are more able to ascertain these levels of awareness. That's what's happening. You can feel it all around you now. Imagine having a discussion with yourself 40 years ago. The one 40 years ago wouldn't know what the hell you're talking about. But now we pick it up like this. Goo goo gaga, says Ray. I had a radio show with astrology, 1982, 1983. And sometimes I was early just on astrology, 4 years. And sometimes I'd see big spiritual happenings in these people's charts. And I'm going, wow, look at blah. And they would say to me, almost all of them, whenever I talked about spirit, I got to go to church more. I'm not going to church enough. I just got back from church. And I said, I'm not taking an attendance report. I'm talking about your spiritual unfoldment within you. And they didn't know what the hell I was talking about. No idea. So it took time. That's 1982. That's 40 years ago. Look how much we've come forward in 40 years. Look how much the gay movement has progressed in 40 years. Now, Eris is in the streets. Eris is in the streets, and you can feel it. And everybody's saying you can feel it, but they don't know what it is. They call it this, they call it that. It's Eris. They're one and the same. So let's go back to our genius. So you see this massive, as a matter of fact, as an astrologer, I reserve the right to put all these planets into one lump. I put them all in one lump. Genius. Now, I've seen other people with planets like this, and they're not in touch with it. And they seem like normal folks if they don't see this. And they have some idiosyncrasies here and there, but they can't channel it. Everything in the chart has to be just right to the degree for it to come out. So you see Neptune comes over here. It's feeding his Venus, and that's when he sings his greatest album in his history. He's not giving up now. Now you see Uranus is at 8. Uranus is at 10. So Uranus has gone all the way around, takes 84 years, and Uranus is now at 10, right here. And it's got to return to 26. So when the Uranus returns, most people feel, I'm done. I've done all I could do. I'm finished with why I came here. It doesn't mean he will. Look at Ramdas. Ramdas had 84. He went on 4 or 5 years later before he passed away. So we don't understand what happens. But at 84, the planets, look at John Paul II, left exactly when Uranus came back. Exactly. It was back. Uranus was back at its natal position when he left. And you could see him in his peaked body that he had left. He was tired of being in that body. You saw the very active, strong mind, but he just couldn't get around anymore. And he just wanted out. He wanted out. He wanted to go home. So when the Uranus returns, Dylan will have a choice. And as smart as he is, and as good as his receptors are, he'll know it. He'll know it. He might even sing a song. He might even do a last tour. You don't know. It's up to him. It's very complex. And he could go on till he's 90 singing. We don't know. But what Uranus does is the planet that liberates. At 84, he will have his choice. He will have his choice if he wants to quit. He will have his choice. Now I want to talk to you about 1965. In 1965, okay, here's Uranus and here's Pluto. And Uranus moves much faster than Pluto. And by 1965, Uranus and Pluto were right here. In October of 65, Uranus and Pluto were right here conjuncting. This is what caused the 60s. He went to New York City in 61. So in 61, let's just take a look here. You'll see how this works. Let's just pick July of 1961. Okay, I gotta get this on your screen. Now you're starting to feel the 60s coming. So you're starting to feel it in the 60s. The Beatles aren't here till 65. This is 61. He steals a bunch of records from his friends, tons of records, and he hides himself in a closet, and he just learns all these songs. So he's got the fever so bad, this guy. He's listening to radio, and he's coming on strong, and he's feeling a Uranus Pluto coming together in 61. I'm staring at 61 right there. Now they get together at 18 degrees in October of 61, or 65, I'm sorry. And what happens to him? He's a hit in 61, 62, his albums are out. So 3 years later in 65, he goes to London and he pulls out electric guitars and starts playing electric sets. And they're screaming at him for being a traitor. And they're screaming and throwing stuff. They don't want him to sing electric stuff. They think he's a bum. And it hurt his feelings very bad. And they're screaming at him. But this guy is an avatar of the moment. He's not here to please you. He's here as a speaker of the collective. That's what he is. He's a speaker. So 61 through 71 was the 60s. 60 to 72, around that range. Those 12 years is when the Uranus-Pluto was approaching and it started to split up. But that's when you guys that lived through the 60s saw this incredible force that didn't want to behave anymore. And it was so dangerous, he could have killed himself during this time. As a matter of fact, a couple years later, 66, he had a vicious motorcycle wreck and had to take years off the stage. But these planets are so powerful, he could have fried mentally like a lot of his friends did fry in 1970, right? A lot of his friends did. They just cooked mentally because their nervous system just got overwhelmed by it. And the friction is how you die with major energy. The friction is caused by the ego. You're trying to capture it. You're trying to compartmentalize it. But he wasn't that stupid. He just let it come through. It came through Hendrix's fingers. Wow, you heard it. It came through Woodstock in 69. You saw it. But if you try to put it in a jar, it can kill you. It's the two planets it's two of the planets that are on us now. John Wesley Harding album, 1969. Exactly right, Sarah. Now, I want to tell you a couple of secrets about this. All right. I've been on to this for a long time. Remember, he's got a very strong Neptune at the top of the chart. Okay? And I didn't show you this. I better show you this because this is really, really important. This is a big, big deal. Let me get it on your chart. One more time, I got to get it on your screen. Okay. Look at Neptune at almost 25. Look at Mercury at 23. His main planet is square to Neptune. Neptune is squaring his ascendant. Neptune is in the 9th house of philosophy. Let the people know. Okay. Now follow me and you'll start to make sense of this. When I have Pisces people in my office or on my readings, or somebody with a lot of Neptune or a lot of Pisces planets, they have a hard time with reality. In the translation of Neptune people, Neptune sun, Neptune opposite the sun, Neptune opposite the moon, they have a hard time because Neptune wants everything boundless. I think Erica has Neptune opposite one of her planets. Well, you got a planet that's insisting on being boundless, and the other planets are insisting on being this or this or that. Well, Neptune's going to win because it's powerful. The outer planets are the big boys. Okay? So what happens with Neptune people is they will not accept a definition. Well, you're this way because you're that way, and you're the third one born, and you're from Germany. And the Neptune person goes, I don't think so. You're talking to an Aries or somebody who's real sure of themselves, and they'll go, I don't think so. They will not let you limit them. They will not let you define them. I don't care what their sign is, if they're strong Neptune, because they know they're more than that. But see, they go so far with that that's where they get in trouble. Because as I said in that book there, the key to being a Pisces person or being Neptunian is they need more ego. They're too rarefied. They can't handle it. They didn't grow up in a tent in the Himalayas, in a cave. They can't handle the non-self. They can't handle the non-ego because they've not been trained to. So they have to adjust themselves by allowing themselves to have more ego and letting it be. But Neptune people get rarefied and they really don't want to accept. So you go back and you look at interview after interview and after interview of Bob Dylan, and he is a pain in the ass, and he is the trickster, which is Gemini, and he won't answer a straight question. Not only because he just can't believe how dumb we are to ask it, but he is a trickster, and he won't let himself get defined. Even you listen to him now, and if you want to see something, go to YouTube and type in Dylan's 26-minute response to the Nobel Committee. And he gave them a 26-minute response. Dylan's response to the Nobel. Now, there's one video that's him, a woman's reading his acceptance speech. This is different. This is his written out thank you to the committee. And in this 26-minute video, he credits some musicians in his life, but he credits 3 books that he read. And it will just knock you over. And he ends it all by saying, thank you to my muse. Because he knows it's not him. So you see the trick with Dylan, the trick with us, the trick with all of us, all these books we read, is we have to be Marcia. We have to be Sarah. We have to be John. We have to be everybody. But at the same time, not. And you're not going to get this straight from a church. All they're going to do is make you feel guilty and give money, even if they got good intentions. So you are the self, but you're not. And that's what Dylan starts about. And because he is able to not sell out, how many times has he been said, oh, you are this voice of the generation? No, I'm not. He kept denying it all these 50 years, 60 years. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. But that's how he kept from being attached. And the attachment is what causes friction, which causes heat, which causes you to burn out. You can be guaranteed when you look at Jim Morrison and you look at Janis Joplin and all them, what happened is they just got too much. They got too much energy from too many places all around, and their nervous system couldn't handle it, and they fried. How did they fry? They just covered it with drugs to manage it. And they just fried. So, I could bore you. I hope you're not bored now, but I could bore you with a lot of other details. You do notice that Mars is kind of out here by itself. This is actually kind of a bucket pattern. Neptune is kind of a bucket handle. Mars is kind of a handle too. And where's the Mars? In Pisces. Terrible place for Mars, but it's a real good place if you want to follow the muse. Mars in Pisces means, no, you're not going to follow your personal interests. Your personal interests are going to line up with everybody else, what they need. So you can see what's so successful about Dylan is not only the genius, but he's got all the early childlike planets. And they're all nestled in between Pluto, Neptune, Eris, Sag. He's got all this tremendously universal antenna out there, all coming into his personal planets. And when you have all personal planets in the young sign, you're not interesting. You're not very broad. You're not very big. And when you got all the outer planets, and you don't have enough inner planets, then you're talking to yourself. You're picking up all this stuff, but you can't communicate it. So you have to have a blend of the two. And I really think I've done enough of this chart. I hope that you understand where I was going with it. So in 65, what he did was he became the voice of, hey, kids, it's going to go electric. And what happened? Bye, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and everything went electric. That was because Dylan, that was because Uranus and Pluto, and he couldn't play the acoustic anymore. His hands went over to the electric. Uranus is electric. It's an electric bolt. Constantly, Dylan said, he said what the gurus said. He said, I'm constantly in a state of becoming. I'm constantly in a state of unfolding and becoming. And he and Neil both, they have no idea where they're going to go, what they're going to do. Neil owns the toy trains now, Lionel Trains. You know that? Neil Young owns Lionel Trains. He's the owner. He has got this tremendous, huge train system in his barn out on his farm. That's where he takes his kid to play and unwind and become human. Yeah, so he didn't know he was going to end up owning Lionel Trains. So these guys don't know where it's going to go. And why do I say that? And I think this is pertinent before we get into Oprah. Why does every reading end with, but where am I going next? Hey, Rick, what am I going to do next? At least they're not asking, is this going to happen? Because I don't answer those questions because I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm an astrologer. I don't know what's going to happen because that's not what astrology is about. The ones who have the least trouble with me, the ones that have the least trouble with themselves as they leave a reading are the ones that understand it's trust and they're going to find out. Spirit will take care of me. Spirit's going to speak through me. And I'm pausing here to think for a moment. I don't have the answers, but I do know that. And I know that when I shut up and when I quit worrying and try to control and let spirit take over, as Sarah will tell us, everything goes fine. Now, we're going to change tunes because I have time. I want to show you the chart of Oprah. And I was wondering, John's got a question. You go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, John, the new Zoom. See if you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
I have to leave now, so.
Oh, okay.
Great, thank you.
Good having you back. Come join us again.
Okay, the best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come. Thank you for joining us anytime.
Thank you, take care.
Okay, hanging with us now. All right. I wonder, do you guys know, did they name Oprah because it's backward for Harpo? Does anybody know? I'm going to unmute everybody because the crowd is so small because we're doing a boring subject, see? Oh, we're not. See, we're doing a boring subject. Marsha's on. Everybody's on. Okay. Now, what I'm going to show you by looking at this chart is fascinating because, Harpo here. Here's Oprah Winfrey. I'll give you time to take a look. She's a Scorpio. I'm sorry, she's Aquarian with a lot of Scorpio in her chart. Sun in Aquarius, same degree as Venus. T-squared of Mars and Scorpio. Virgo rising. Boy, she could run a magazine. Look up and down the midheaven. Look. Jupiter, Moon. Jupiter, Gemini, Moon in Sag. Look at that. The themes are so different. You got this Aquarian theme, then you got this Gemini Sag theme, then you got this intense Scorpionic theme. And this ain't no picnic, she's got Saturn in Scorpio, and that's no picnic, let me tell you. That's a tough placement. So this woman was not destined to be on TV and a billionaire. She had a lot of rock and roll going on inside her mind and in her heart. And I'll guarantee you there's a lot of people with this chart born around January 29th of 54 around the world. There are people with these energies that did not harness it. And it became pretty nasty. Because this is a very nasty triangle here. This can be a very nasty triangle. Pluto 24, this is 24, this is 20. Mercury opposite Pluto, all that energy going through that Mars in Scorpio, third house Saturn in Scorpio. This means that this woman could tear your head off if she wanted to with her tongue. She could rip your head right off. She's got that kind of force in her, but we don't know about her. She does have Virgo rising. That's real good for self-discipline. She is very wonderfully friendly because Jupiter and Venus in Aquarius. I mean, the Sun and Venus is a wonderful combination of somebody who's really friendly, a true friend who's very loyal. The Mercury is in Aquarius. But really, what really helps her is the lightening up from this. The lightening up of Jupiter and Gemini and Moon and Sag. This keeps it light. And you can tell when you're watching her, you can tell that she's lighthearted, but you can tell there's some boiling going on in her boiler that she could explode when she wanted to. Boom! She could. So this is the kind of chart that you hand it to her because she's done the work. And I could go through other charts to see what her past lives are like and spiritual life is like, etc. She draws people to her. And look at this, the Soul Sunday, trying to help everybody spiritually. Here's Chiron, opposite Uranus, T squared to Neptune. So she got this vicious Scorpio stuff and this real rollover, play dead, peaceful pacifist Neptune stuff. So you can see in a chart, once I've learned by taking my chart apart, I'm always learning through the years, your planets are exactly where they need to be. They're exactly where they need to be. And sometimes things are tough when other planets hit there. But you can see in her chart, she could have gone south, she could have gone north. She's obviously done a lot right, and she's obviously another avatar. She's another avatar. And when you want to find out about the avatars, you do the harmonic charts. That's where it shows you this stuff. And there's no doubt that Neil is, that Dylan is, that Oprah is. Obama is, and so's Trump. He's an avatar of a different kind, that's all. But you could go, you see, and Liza and I have written to her in the past 15 years, please let me come on your show and let me take the whole time to read your chart to the public.
Nope.
Because the public would see what your potential is. I would ask you what happened this year, what happened during this year, and I would show people with the favorite chart of America how this person turned out and how she got the forks in the road, and she took mostly the favorable fork. And see, and maybe that letter will be read 20 years from now. Maybe she'll be ready for it. But without giving the hype and all that stuff. Astrology, the astrologer's going to read Oprah's chart. But then people start to see, my God, this stuff works. So anyhow, you see in her chart, she's got the symbols of phenomenal ability to broadcast to the media, to the people. Jupiter and Gemini at the top. I mean, she does it through songs, she does it through magazines, she does it through TV, she does it through acting. She's got all these different abilities, you see. And opposite the moon in Sag, she's very ebullient. She's very much a cheerleader. These are Sag energies. But underneath all this, she's got a gritty place, a gritty, powerful Mars in Scorpio and a Saturn in Scorpio and a Virgo rising. So you don't mess with her. But she's not going to come off road to stop you. You can tell, I can sense when I see her, there's such a strong Virgo element. She's got herself wrapped tightly inside her philosophy. She's controlled. She's controlled. And these keep her from being too controlled.
Yeah.
Safety valve. Wahoo, wahoo, wahoo. This is a queen of the media. This is a leader of mankind.
That she is.
Sure she is. I mean, well, what's Oprah reading this month? Well, who cares what she's reading? What's Jim down the street reading? But boy, when she speaks, oh, what's she reading?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to show you this because this is a real good example. See, just with Mercury opposite Pluto, she could have grown up to be really mentally inferior. She could have used this to be threatened by everybody. Everybody's smarter than I am, have no confidence in her mind. She could have grown up to be very Aquarian, the moon hanging around the nadir. She could have been just shut off from everybody and hanging on somewhere trying to be safe. But these kind of charts, Dylan's chart is more of a naturally just gifted somebody. And Oprah's chart is, she had to fight for it. And I would love to sit with her and ask her about when the big planets hit here, when the big planets hit that spot. What happened to you? What happened? Anyhow, I think what we'll do is we'll say goodnight to our YouTubers and let you know that if you ever want to join us in our intimate crowd, just go to starself.com. This is my website, starself.com/unplugged. If you want to join us on Thursday nights, 8 o'clock Eastern, it's free. Just go starself.com/unplugged. Hold on 1 second. We're not going anywhere, but we are saying good night to our YouTubers. Good night.